Do you know that moment when you're fishing and you have that fish of a lifetime on and something happens? You were dreaming of seeing it and verifying that this was the largest fish of your life, but you did something and lost it. Ryan Johnston is here today to give you some tips on hooking and landing steelhead and other fish, and we'll give you some great stories on cast hope and what you can do to help struggling kids. This is the Wet Fly Swing podcast where we show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we love. Hey, I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a kid. I grew up in a fly shop and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers than just about anyone in this country. Today, Ryan Johnston is here to give us the 3 biggest tips on landing a steelhead once you hook up. These tips will address the fish barrel roll, the jumping fish, and the screaming or running fish. We will also find out how to side drift for success and a great tip on finding groups of fish to increase your chances this season. Plus, you're going to hear 3 stories about casthope.org and the program that's been changing the lives of struggling youth. Back to the bread and butter, Ryan Johnston from casthope.org. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. Thanks for having me on, bud.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this morning. I know you were saying when we first off air got on, you're this time of year, you're not a morning person, and so we're getting started nice and early. But I wanted to just touch base. We're going to get into, I think, some of your past background on guiding with steelhead in California. We're going to talk about Cast Hope, which is a great program you have going. But now you're in Montana, so talk about that a little bit. What's going on now? What are you doing this time of year?
Well, this time of year, I'm shoveling some snow and keeping warm, taking a California boy out of good weather and putting him into the Rockies.
How's it been, Ryan, making that change? So you were in California, which everybody thinks of California. There's definitely some nasty weather as you go up north probably, but I'm guessing Montana isn't quite as warm as California?
No, well, I was raised in San Diego. Left San Diego when I was 18, so I left the perfect weather and moved to Northern California for college, went to UC Davis, and lived in the Northern California Valley for the second 20 years of my life. So, no, I have not lived in severe, harsh weather. So this has been a learning process of, pipes freezing and things breaking. And this week we had negative 25. Damn. So that's not too pleasant.
What is that like? What's the negative 25 when you go outside? What's that like?
You don't spend a lot of time outside. So you go out for 10, 15 minutes and, if you expose your skin too long, it's, you start getting some stinging cheeks and stinging noses. And so you're pretty much just hopping from heater to heater, whether it's a store or, your car or your house. But yeah, it's a learning curve. The nice thing is it doesn't last forever. Where we're at here in Flathead Valley, we just get these little outliers. So it lasts for 3 or 4 days. And then, it's back to the high 20s, low 30s. So luckily it's not like Alaska where, you have negative temperatures for weeks at a time. But it's definitely an adjustment when you were born and raised in the perfect weather of San Diego.
Did you ever think about heading back to San Diego? It seems like there's some downfalls of San Diego too, right? There's a lot of people down there and stuff. Have you ever thought about heading back?
I do. I actually dream about that, maybe in a retired life, buying a center console boat and living summer times down there and chasing tuna and dorado offshore, and just, having friends and family come down and pay for gas and run a boat all summer. That's kind of my life goal when I get older and my kids are out of the house. And, I love that Southern California offshore scene and just the excitement of, chasing, feeding fish. And it's a whole different world than our freshwater trout and steelhead fishing.
Yeah. So what is it in San Diego, what is it? I mean, obviously it's got the weather, you're right there on the coast. It's got this cool thing going, but what is it that maybe what would be a negative about San Diego?
The negative about people is people, like you kind of nailed it earlier. It's just a lot of people. We live in an area now where a big town in Montana, it's 25,000 people. You live in San Diego and you're living with 2 million people.
Right.
So it's my parents still live there and, their whole life is based around when the traffic's going to be, right? You got to get here by this certain hour. You got to leave there in a certain hour, And so, a lot of their life is dictated by the people and the traffic. But you get the perfect weather where it's mid 60s to high 70s, like pretty much every day of the year.
So you don't ever get tired of the weather when it's the same temperature all year long.
Yeah, if you're a Four Seasons person, you probably wouldn't like it. But I think being raised there and something about wearing flip-flops year round is pretty appealing to me.
That's great. No, I hear it. We've been down there before. We talked kind of jokingly, probably more than anything, about moving, just because it's spendy too, right? That's one of the other things. It's not cheap to live in San Diego, I'm guessing, still, or not getting cheaper.
Yes. Well, sadly, where we live in Montana is not cheap as well. So we moved here from Chico, California, and about an hour and a half north of Sacramento. And Chico is an affordable place to live in California, but where we live in Montana is probably 25 to 30% more in home prices than where we left in Chico. So a lot of people are moving to Montana, just like me. A lot of the locals are saying we're ruining the state.
Yeah, you're one of those Californians, right? You're one of those Californians that's moved into Montana.
Yeah, me and a whole bunch of other people. I don't think of myself as a normal Californian, being from 20 years as a fly fishing guide. And, so I have a little different perspective, I think, than the average Californian. But yeah, it's been really cool. There's so many transplants here in Montana over the last 6 to 7 years that it's actually really welcoming. There's a whole bunch of people here that are looking for community and friendships and relationships, and the whole anti-Californiaism, that approach, it does exist, but it's not nearly as apparent as a lot of us talk about, so it's actually been really, really refreshing at how welcoming this community has been to me and my family.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, today I think we're going to dig into a couple things. Like I said at the top, we were going to talk. I think steelhead is definitely a big topic for a lot of listeners, or steelhead nymphing. We're going to talk a little about that, and then also cast hope. Maybe we can just start there with cast hope. There's a lot of great groups around the country. I want to hear kind of how this came to be, and I know Hogan's involved in this as well, but maybe you can just talk about that. Where did this idea of Cast Hope come from, and describe what it is a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm the founder and still executive director of the organization. I started Cast Hope in 2009. Cast Hope came from a sermon our pastor gave. My wife and I were attending a Presbyterian church in Chico, and our pastor was talking about using your personal gifts to change your local community. So a lot of times you go to church, you hear the pastor talk, you leave, and it just, whatever he talked about, exits your head as soon as you open the door. But that Sunday, I just couldn't get the message out of my head. So I just kept thinking about it and decided that I needed to do something in Chico to help support my local community. So I've always had a passion for kids and working with youth. I'd volunteered for a bunch of youth organizations as I was growing up. And so I decided I was going to donate one trip a month as a guide just to a kid who was having a hard time in life, So kind of just did this word of mouth, just doing it on my own, and, took out a kid whose parents were going through a divorce. So he was going through that separation of the family. A couple months later, took out a kid who was, battling cancer, and just did this for about 6 months, and eventually had this junior high kid come out with his uncle. And the junior high kid's dad had passed away the year before. So the uncle was stepping into his life, trying to be that male role model for him. And so we were on the lower Sacramento River, we're fishing for trout, and the kid was in the front of the drift boat and the uncle was in the back. The kid had already caught one fish, but then he caught his second fish. We take the pictures, we experience that, joy, and he turns around to his uncle who's, sitting behind me, and says, "This is the coolest thing I have ever done. I want to start fly fishing with you. I want to go buy a fly rod. I want this to become our thing." And then just experiencing that pure joy of that kid. Some people call it a holy moment. I call it a God moment. And I just said, hey, I got to figure out how to do this more than once a month. So all the steps were kind of in place. At the time, I was working on an MBA at Chico State. I was guiding full time and doing a master's in the evening. And so working with two professors, and then one of our friends was also a nonprofit consultant. So our friend and the two teachers helped me create a business plan of taking kids out fly fishing. And that's when Cast Hope became. So we created the business plan. And then about 6 months later, I started applying for the nonprofit status and got that approved. The biggest thing we do with Cast Hope is that all of the kids, their first experience is with a guide. So their first experience fly fishing is on a guided trip. Our belief is that to really catch a kid, that person needs to hook and connect to a fish as soon as possible. A lot of organizations that focus on youth in this country, they focus on casting, they focus on fly tying, and then 6 months later, they take the kid fishing.
Right.
And a lot of these organizations have a hard time retaining the kids because kids these days and age with all the screens, they're used to instant gratification. And it's a sad thing, the whole process of us when we were children and,
totally different. Yeah.
Totally different, right? Like we were taught patience of going out and waiting for a bite, right? So to interact well with the new generation is you need to plug them in as fast as possible. So we have about 30 guides who work across the board at our different regions of Cast Hope. And the whole goal is to connect that kid with the fish as soon as possible. And then as soon as you connect that kid, and then you offer them additional guide trips, and then you keep feeding the fire, the new passion, right? And then 3-4 trips later, we do what we call clinics. And at the clinics, we give them free rods, flies, all the gear they need, and we teach them how to fish a spot within about 30 to 45 minutes of their house. Something that is they can do on their own, where they don't need soap guides. So we use the guides to kind of catch them and get them connected to the fish right off the bat. And then a few months later, we're then giving them all the necessary equipment to fish their own local waters on their own. So yeah, we have been really blessed. The organization has grown a ton since 2009. We currently now have 4 regions of Cast Hope. So we have the original region we started in Chico. We call that the North Valley. So that we're serving kids from Sacramento to Redding. And then about 5 years into our program, we had a donor come to us and said, hey, we've been watching from afar what you guys have been doing. We think it's really cool. We want Cast Hope in our community. And so we pitched this donor a business plan. He signed up and he decided to give $16,000 a year for a 3-year commitment. So he made $16,000 for each year. Then we started Cast Hope Tahoe. So Tahoe is serving kids from Truckee and Reno. And so Matt Herron, who's a popular outfitter in the Tahoe area, Matt Herron's our regional director up there. And about 3 or 4 years after that, we started our 3rd region, Cast Hope San Diego, which is close to my heart, born and raised there. So we reached out to Conway Bowman, who's the big Mako guy in San Diego. And Conway runs Cast Hope San Diego now for the last 4 years. And then the exciting news is we finally have moved out of state and we opened a region in Asheville, North Carolina last summer. So we have a regional director out there. His name's Ryan as well. And we're working with Davison Outfitters. The guides are, serving the kids. And then the vision moving forward is we're looking for funding right now to start Cast Hope here in Flathead Valley. Now that I'm a resident here, it only makes sense to have Cast Hope here. So yeah, we currently have about 700 kids in our program who are all being introduced to fly fishing for our first time. But our biggest goal is we don't want to be a one-time organization. There are organizations that take a kid fishing one time and says, oh, wasn't that cool? And they're like, oh, that was awesome. And he's like, all right, well, see you later. Our hope is that we can work with kids from the time they enter our organization until they graduate high school. So our age demographic is 10 to 18. So we have kids who come into our program. Let's say they come in at 12. We hope they stay with us all the way through high school. And it's kind of interesting. When I started the organization, I never imagined that we would have kids who would become so passionate about fly fishing that they would turn into their careers. So we now have 4 different kids who have come through Cast Hope who have become fly fishing guides. And that's now what they do for a living. So some of those, they're not kids anymore. They're all in their young 20s. And I've turned into more of a mentor than anything, right? After being a guide for 21 years now, and to have a kid in Idaho, we have another one in Montana, and we have 2 in Alaska, to call them and have conversations about interacting with clients and what does it mean to be professional and what does it mean to do your job well. And these are all kids I met when they were in junior high and early high school, right? When they were playing sports and chasing girls and, and to watch them grow into men and and make fly fishing, their career, it's pretty humbling to see the process.
Today's episode is brought to you by Northern Rockies Adventures, premium fly fishing trips in the heart of the BC Rockies. Premium all-inclusive fishing packages from Vancouver, BC. Daily fly-in fishing trips to get you straight to the action, and the lodges offer private cabins and the utmost comfort. Learn more about this exclusive BC fishing trip at nradventures.com/wetflyswing. Angler's Coffee roasts some of the highest quality coffee on the market, and every bag you purchase goes to support the fish species we love. My favorite this month is the Woolies blend. The dark roast that Joe has worked his magic meets my needs, and I can't explain exactly what it is, but it's smooth and just right to get my day started. You can head over to Anglers right now at wetflyswing.com/anglers to support a sustainable company with unsurpassed taste. I see why it's successful. I mean, I think that this plan to stay with them, I've heard that. I know there's other programs around. I have a friend that does totally different thing, but with kids, and he used to, basically they stay with them all the way through high school and keep checking in on them, and even after the fact, so like you're not in, and that's really cool because now you're seeing these stories of kids that are becoming guides, and I'm sure they're going to tell more people about this, but this is amazing. And my one question I had as you're going, it seems like the challenge is you're trying to scale it, right? I'm sure there's people listening right now who are in states all over the country. Like, what would you tell them, if they're listening now, like what could they do to help this if they wanted to help some of these kids?
Yeah, I mean, our vision long-term is that we hope that Cast Hope turns into, 10 to 12 regions across the country. Our hope is to impact as many kids as we can. And we both have a passion for fly fishing, and the fly fishing industry talks about giving back to young people. And to be honest, there's very few people who actually are doing it. It's talked a lot about in the industry of, I think there's a huge age demographic now that's coming in. It's more of the skater surf scene, right? It's the 25 to 40-year-olds that, are taking on the sport. But before that, it was predominantly 45 to 70-year-old males. I think our sport is adapting, but they still haven't adapted to youth. And I think it's hard to adapt to youth because they don't have money. So an industry that's targeted at creating income and running a business, it's hard to target youth. So in terms of scaling it, people can donate on our website. If you have a larger vision of maybe wanting to start Cast Hope in your own town, those are conversations that we would have to have on a personal level. And then, I have to go to the board of directors to get that all approved.
Sure.
But yeah, that's a much larger conversation. But in terms of scaling it, our vision and hope is that this turns into 10 or 12 sites, let's say in the next 10 years. But yeah, there's a lot of good happening. There's a lot of kids who need this. And, we all want to be in a relationship, right? I mean, each one of us has a need to connect with other people. And a lot of these kids we work with come from the Boys and Girls Club. They come from foster care homes. Some of these kids are coming from trauma situations where they've been removed from the family, and they don't trust a lot of people. Relationships are dangerous, right? Because of the trauma they've experienced, and so we want to come into their lives and be an outlet, be an area where we can connect them to the outdoors in a healthy way through fly fishing. Man, the impact you see just from removing that kid from, their normal life and putting them into an environment. One great story is we had this kid from the Chico area, and we do a specialized trip for our older kids, and we do the Heritage Trout Challenge. The Heritage Trout Challenge is something the state put together that mimic the Wyoming Cut Slam, where you have to go around and catch certain species of fish in the state. So California has 11 native species of trout that call California home, and they put this challenge together where you have to catch 6 of the 11. So each year we choose 4 or 5 of these kids, or older, like high school age kids, to come do the specialized trip where we're driving around California, and they're seeing new things. One of the fish you have to catch is a coastal cutthroat, and this stream we fish, he flows out right onto the beach. And so we went and fished the stream. Everybody caught their coastal cutthroat, and then after we fished for 4 or 5 hours, we just let the kids just go play in the ocean, right? And So there's 5 kids on this trip. 4 of them are jumping in the waves. And then this one kid named Obie is just standing on the sand looking out at the ocean. And I'm just kind of observing from afar. And then I walk up to Obie and I was like, Obie, it's beautiful, right? And he goes, well, it's so big. And so I paused for a second. I was like, it's so big. And, here's, this comment coming from someone who was raised in San Diego, raised on the ocean, chasing tuna, living on the beach. And I turned to Obie and I was like, Obie, have you seen the ocean before? And he goes, no, I've never seen it. I only seen pictures and people have told me about it. And this kid lived 2.5 hours from the ocean, yet had never had the resources or the family ability to get them there. So, our vision is taking kids fishing, but the larger picture is every kid is impacted in a different way. You're taking them out of their normal settings.
Yeah.
So we really believe that there's kids all across the country that need this,
Yeah. It's not about the fishing, right? It's about the experience.
Yeah, 100%. We're just fishing is the vehicle to access the kids and get them out of their normal environment. And then from there, you start a relationship and then hopefully you're able to mentor them over years of time. And then that's when change really happens. It's the relationship is what's changing the child's life. It's not the fishing.
Right. This is pretty awesome. And do you guys is it kind of girls and boys, or is it mostly boys, or how's that look?
Yeah, no, we have a lot of girls in our program, because we work with the Boys and Girls Club, foster care homes, group homes. I don't know the exact number, but, guessing it's probably 2/3 boys, 1/3 girls.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so you got to go. And I think that's always a challenge for us, just kind of getting more, trying to make it equal, right? Get as many female guests on as male. And it seems like, it's harder to do. But I feel like that you guys, I'm sure there's lots of girls out there that are struggling with the same sorts of things and can have the same impact.
Yeah, there's actually a couple really cool videos on our website, casthope.org, a really inspirational video. Jordy's a girl that I mentored for several years. She's now a student at the University of Wyoming. Then there's another one, Christina. She's on the website as well. And Christina has a really rough story. She was a part of 13 different group homes.
Jeez.
And was just kind of bouncing around the state of California. And then finally, one of my good buddies, past board of directors named Darren Wood. Darren Wood was working at the group home she was at, and he really connected with her and said, Christina, you can blame all the people in the world you want, but kids who come from a trauma-based home, maybe you bounce around once or twice, but he goes, there's one common denominator here, and it's you, So at some point, you got to stop blaming other people and start looking at yourself. And Darren and Christina Darren just hit something, and they really connected. And, he introduced her to Cast Hope and used, the fishing trips kind of as an encouragement for her. And then over time, Christina and I became friends. So she ended up falling in love with basketball, and she ended up becoming an athlete at Sacramento State. And so she made the college team there. And so Christina and I, even though now she's in her early 20s, we still text back and forth, like, how's life going? How's basketball? And it's the connection, right? We all need people, and these kids need mentors in their life too. And so our hope is just using fishing as a vehicle just to connect with the kid, to create an opportunity for change.
Yeah, that's really powerful. This is good. Do you guys, when you go out there, and are you mostly trout for the kids the first time, or like if it's in California, you do some of the steelhead, some of that upper level stuff?
So it kind of depends on which region the kids come from. So like our Chico area where we started, that is predominantly trout and bass. We have found that the kids do really well with the float and fly stuff, kind of indicator stillwater fishing for spotted bass in wintertime. We have several of our guides who are pretty proficient at that. So the kids love that one. It's pretty hard to beat taking kids on the lower Sac just because of how amazing of a trout fishery that river is and how easy it is to catch fish there. So that's a really good place to take them. But like our San Diego kids, they do have some stock trout, in the wintertime. But our San Diego kids are pretty much fishing bass, whether that be San Diego Bay or Mission Bay. So they're primarily targeting, spotted bass, calico bass, halibut. And then as, like you're talking about, as kids become more advanced, as their skills increase, as their desire to be challenged, then we introduce other fish, right? We take them steelhead fishing, we take them striper fishing. Down in San Diego, that's what our advanced kids start going offshore. They'll target yellowtail and tuna. And we just had a kid this week caught his first black sea bass. It was like a 15-pound black sea bass. So yes, as they mature, as they get older, some of the age, abilities, it's pretty hard to take a 12-year-old steelhead fishing just in terms of physical strength. But as they age and they get stronger later in high school, then we'll start introducing, the more advanced methods and, fish that are just harder to catch. So yeah, it's pretty cool, watching kids mature in fishing, but also mature in life. And just, being on that journey with them for years and seeing the maturation. I mean, it's humbling as an adult and as a mentor. Yeah, that's the best part of Cast Hope. It's the relationship and watching the maturation, watching the passion grow, and watching their abilities increase and just their desire to go chase bigger and hotter fish, right? I mean, it's the same thing that happens to every fly fisherman, right? A lot of guys start on bass or trout, and after 5 or 6 years, they want oh, what's next? And you're always looking for the newest thing, right?
Yeah, that's cool. And then the key is to get the kids in and get them into fish quickly. It sounds like that's one of the biggest things that kind of hooks them, I guess, right?
Yes, 100%. And again, we're talking about a different generation of kids who, they have instant gratification all the time. So, we're just, I guess, feeding the beast, but feeding the beast with a new healthy hobby. And so when you put them in a boat with a paid guide, all of our guides are paid about half of what they normally would make. It's their highest probability of catching a fish quickly. There's a lot of people who take people fishing and they volunteer, but you can't make up for hundreds and thousands of days on the water. So our goal is we want to connect that kid to a fish as soon as possible. So we hire local guides who do this for a living, and they are the ones who are personally taking the kids out. So I used to do that a lot, especially when the organization was new. I was one of the guides. And now that, Cast Up has grown to 4 regions and 700 kids, I have more of a manager role, and I'm just kind of, supporting everyone from a 10,000 foot level, and in terms of making sure the program is working well, and, we're raising money to support the program, and then working with the board of directors. So my hope is to, like I said, our hope is in 2025, we want to start Cast Hope here in Flathead Valley. And I'm kind of missing that. I'm kind of missing the connection with the kids. Now that I've been, gone for a year and a half, I have the connection with the older kids that I started guiding when, Cast Up was new, but I'm ready to start that again here in Flathead.
Right on. Get back into it and get on the ground and are you going to be doing some of the work, actually working with the kids, guiding, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's my hope. That's my favorite thing to do, to be honest, is just, there's nothing better than watching a kid catch a fish and just the joy and the smiles. And, there's another part to it too, that not every kid takes it to it really quickly, right? So anyone who's fly fished for any significant amount of time knows that it can be challenging, and, the learning curve can be steep at times, and so sometimes you get kids who really struggle, and, encouraging that kid to work through the process, Like I had a kid one time in California who just was really struggling how to, cast an indicator, and we're just doing the water loading, lobbing off the side of the boat back and forth, and just was really struggling. He wasn't picking it up, and, usually we'd take 10, 12 minutes to teach a kid how to cast, and, here I am 40 minutes later, and the kid can only cast 10 feet off the boat. And just, he just lost his momentum, and, he said, I suck at this. I don't want to do this. And those are teachable moments. This is what I've learned after, guiding hundreds of kids through the program, is that, as soon as that kid gets discouraged and says, I suck, or I don't want to do this anymore, I told the kid, I was like, okay, next time in life, if you tell yourself you suck, you're never going to try. Right. So if you're playing sports and you're like, oh, I suck at this, you're always going to be on the bench, or you're never going to make the team. But if you're willing to work through the process and say, okay, I'm going to do one step each time. Say I'm playing basketball, I'm going to dribble better, or I'm going to shoot better. And for fly casting, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to haul my line, or I'm going to, add one little technique each little step, and then in time you'll get better. So I made a promise to the kid. I said, if you stand up and try for the next 5 hours and you actually give me 100% of your effort, I guarantee you will catch a fish. A lot of rivers, you can't make that guarantee, but when you're on the lower Sac, you can. So he's like, you can't make that promise. I was like, well, I mean, I know I'm taking a risk, but let's see if I can pull it off. You give me 100%, I'll give you 100%. And so he almost challenged me, like he wanted to prove me wrong. And so he stood up and I said, okay, you're not listening to what I'm saying. Here's the 2 techniques in casting you need to do better. And like, just try to focus on those 2 things. And, your flies are going to go 10 to 15 feet further. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, he's starting to improve, and I said, okay, let's go fish now. And so we started the process, and what do you know, 30 minutes later, he catches a fish. And, the kid was elated. And by the end of we do these like 2/3 of a day. So by the end of the trip, there was 2 other guides on the trip. So there was 5 kids and 1 mentor with them. And the kid had caught 9 fish. And he's like looking around the other boats going like, how many fish did you guys catch? How many fish did you guys catch? And just the amount of pride that he was feeling. And I told him, okay, I want you to stop right now. Look at me. And so he turns around and he goes, okay, I want to take you back to 5 hours ago when you told me you sucked. You didn't want to ever try this. And now you are the most excited kid on this whole trip. And you're asking me when you can come again. In life, if you don't give it a shot, if you don't try, if you don't work through the process, you'll never know what this moment feels like. But you were able to overcome your discouragement. You were able to overcome, the hard part of learning, and you absorbed the failures and you got to this incredible place, So I need you to hold on to this moment right now when it comes to school, when it comes to dating, when it comes to life. These are the moments that, you can teach kids that are applicable for the rest of their lives. Now, whether or not they hold on to it, who knows? But they turn into teachable moments.
Right. I love it. That's a great story. I try to hold on to those and share those things with my kids too. Some of those, I think of like failure, it's something that always has a negative thing, but I think of it like, I've sort of heard some quotes like those who fail most win, or whatever. But the idea being that life's going to be a bunch of failures, probably more failures, but that you got to get through the failures to get to the successes.
Yes.
I think that's like the cool stuff. And you're teaching these kids who have been struggling probably most of their lives, you're giving them these huge lifelong lessons that not only are they taking away for fly fishing, but like you're, obviously impacting their life. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's a humbling process, man. I mean, it's so cool to watch the joy, watch the maturation, and just watch the connection to the outdoors. A lot of kids these days are so tied into screens, whether it's gaming or computers or TV, movies. And, our generation, we spent hours and hours outside. Our parents kicked us out of the house saying, get out of the house, go do something, And that's just not how it is for most kids anymore. And it's one thing we're really enjoying about Montana is having land and saying, get out of the house, like go play with sticks or cut something down, or, like the kids in California and a lot of this country are just so addicted to screens that, it makes me really nervous for our outdoor spaces and what that means for the next generation and who's going to champion that, and who's going to protect our outdoor spaces. And, again, this is not the goal of Cast Hope, but it's the natural fruit that occurs.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are benefits of this program, including that. Yeah. I mean, if you're not getting the younger kids out there into it, if they're all going into their digital world of whatever, there's not going to be anybody here to keep this thing going.
Yeah, 100%.
Nice. Well, this is amazing. I think we'll have links to everything in the show notes, from what we're talking about here. I wanted to kind of turn a little bit and talk a little about, I think, another one of the things you spent a lot of time on, which was steelhead fishing in California, and just maybe highlight, we have a lot of people that are into steelhead, and maybe we could talk about that a little bit, and we'll bring it back to Cast Hope before we get out of here. But maybe talk about that. So you were guiding in the rivers in Northern California. What were the big steelhead rivers that you guided that people were coming for?
Yeah, so California has kind of an interesting steelhead scene. I kind of break the steelhead scene in California into 3 different groups. You have what I call the valley steelhead. So those are the fish that are coming through Golden Gate Bridge, San Francisco Bay, and they're swimming up all the tributaries to the bay. So those are your valley steelhead. I was guiding, obviously the lower Sac has steelhead on them. A big tributary to the lower Sac is called the Feather River. and the Yuba River. The Yuba doesn't have a ton of steelhead on them. There's a few still left, but the Feather has a hatchery, has a decent number of wild fish as well. So I spent a lot of time on the Feather River in the valley, as well as fishing for steelhead down low on the lower Sacramento River. And then the second group of steelhead fishing you have, and I call it kind of the mountain steelhead fishing, and that's with the Trinity River, which is famous in Northern California. So what happens, the difference between the valley and the mountains, the valley fish are kind of like big rainbows. They're those fish that, a lot of steelheaders would call half pounders. They're those fish that are 18 to 21 inches on average. A good sized fish on the Feather River is like 24, 25 inches. And then, a few times a season, you would see those 27 to 29 inch fish, so most of your largest fish on the Feather were topping out around, 10 pounds or so. And then you jump to the Trinity River, you're up in the mountain situation. So the water gets a lot colder. Those fish behave a lot differently because they're just dealing with, colder water temperatures. But your numbers go down. On the Feather River, most days, we're hooking 12 to 14 fish a day. Like I said, it's kind of like big trout fishing. But then you jump up to the Trinity River, and, in your average day, you're going to catch about half of that. You're going to catch you're going to hook 6 or 7 steelhead a day. But the benefit of that is your fish size goes up. Your average fish now is kind of that 24 to 27 inches. They're that 6 to 8 pound fish. And then, you're seeing fish around 29, 30 inches, every few days. And then, big fish on the Trinity are going to go, 33, 34, 35 would be a monster, So but it's that next 5 or 6 inches, in terms of the average and also the larger size. And then you jump to the coastal steelhead, what I call the real steelhead fishing. That's where, we have the similar size fish as you do in Oregon, right? Your average fish is 8 to 12 pounds. Your big ones are 15 to 18. And
Winter steelhead.
Yep. And everyone's looking for the 20 pounder that doesn't exist,
Yep. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So steelhead fishing in California is it's interesting because it gives you a lot of options, right? It's not just a winter game. In the valley, we have spring and fall run fish. On the Trinity, you have fall and winter fish. And then on the coast, you have your traditional, January, February, March fish in the wintertime. So the nice thing about guiding steelhead in Northern California is that, it's not like I'm just guiding steelhead for 3 months. I'd be guiding steelhead for about 7 months a year. So it is always a nice mix-up for guys who wanted to be a little more challenged than just, going trout fishing on the lower Sac or trout fishing on the Yuba. So yeah, it was fun to bounce around, so I fished 4 different steelhead rivers, just depending on time of year and, what season it was.
Are the coastal ones, do people know about those, or those kind of secrets that you'd be fishing there?
They used to be secrets. I think social media has ruined a lot of secret places and rivers. I started fishing the California coast in 2003, about then. So probably, a little over 20 years ago. 2003, there wasn't really many guys doing it. There was a lot of bait guys who were running plugs, but the fly fishing scene really hadn't found it yet, and so there was a few of us guides who kind of started going over there and exploring and finding boat ramps and just figuring out how to do it. And it was fun. I mean, it was just this like big unknown scene, and you'd go fishing for a week even when conditions were prime. And you might see one other fly fisherman in a week. You go, let's say the Eel River, spend a ton of time on the Eel. You go to the Eel River now with prime water conditions, you're going to see 20 guide boats every day.
Oh, wow.
The seal has been broken. Some of that is guiding and some of that is social media. And I think people have learned that they're really not as hard to catch as most people think they are. When you're swinging for them, that's a whole other world. But, when you're nymphing for them, catching steelhead is really not that hard. It's just a matter of being there at the right time when the water is in good condition, So, yeah, it's not a secret anymore. It's kind of sad to actually be a part of that 20-year development of, seeing hardly anyone to going there now. And you can name vehicles as you drive down the road from parking lot to parking lot of, other guide buddies, or competing guides. It's definitely because of the pressure. You don't catch as many as you used to, you still catch them. Most days on the Eel River, Like per boat, you're going to hook 2 or 3 fish for a boat, so whether that's 1 angler or 2 anglers, that's kind of average.
Drifthook is back again, baby. Back for another big year and here to outfit you with the flies you need for your next huge trip this year. From their special nymphs to dry flies to hoppers, streamers, and of course their Euro nymph fly kits, they've got you covered. These ship free directly to your door, ready to start catching fish. At drifthook.com, you can find over 50 instructional videos and over 200 articles to improve your fly fishing game. And I've been testing the Drifthook articles with some of our guests on the podcast as we've been verifying that Matt has been spot on with a lot of his content. Been a lot of fun this year. So search it up this year. You will likely to find Drifthook online teaching you. They also have over 150 verified 5-star reviews and a 30-day money-back guarantee. You can head over right now to drifthook.com to support this podcast and a small company doing amazing things. That's Drifthook, drifthook.com, and use the code SWING, SWING, at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Okay, back to the show. Are you fishing like out of the boat, or is this like, how are you fishing in this? I don't know if you want to pick the eel or whatever river.
Yeah, we're generally side drifting, so fish using the boat as the weapon and, just getting extended drifts and back run runs.
So side drifting, what would that be if you were, describe maybe that, if somebody's in the, and could you do this side drifting in the other rivers or the Trinity, the lower Sac, are you doing different techniques?
Yeah, we're side drifting is just casting an indicator off the side of the boat, say 15 to 20 feet off the boat, and then getting your indicators slightly ahead of the boat. So, when your flies land, feeding a little slack, and then the guide kind of rowing with you and pacing your indicator, and so what happens then is you're keeping your flies on the bottom for as long as possible. And I always tell people the boat is the weapon. So like when you walk and wade, you cast, you do your drift, and maybe you can extend your drift for 50 feet. Let's just use that as a number. And then you have to strip back in and start over, right? And it can work really well in small rivers where you can't get boats into, like you don't have another option. But on a river like the Eel, you might have a run that's 100 yards long, right? So let's say 50 of those yards is like the prime holding water, so you can have your clients cast in and you start your drift, and then you're literally just going to float with them for 50 yards with their flies on the bottom, so what it does is it maximizes your time, your flies in the zone. So and then you get to the bottom of that 50 yards of that prime holding water, then you just row back to the top and you repeat and do it as many times as you want,
Yeah. How do you avoid, and this probably depends on water clarity, but how do you avoid spooking the fish? You would think the boat being right there. Yeah. How do you avoid that?
Yeah. Some of it's water clarity. I mean, if it's steelhead green, let's say you have 3-4 feet of visibility. I mean, those fish can't even see you anyways, If you're fishing low and clear water, a lot of those fish are going to go deeper. And so a lot of our indicator setups, we're running at like 8 to 8.5 feet to our weight. So at that kind of depth, it doesn't really matter, you can get your indicators farther away, so rather than fishing 20 feet, you can go 25 or 30. But generally, when you start getting in that 30-foot range, your hook set becomes weaker. One thing about coastal steelhead is you have to have a good hook set, and you have to have those first 2 strips have to be really, really fast, just so they stay on the hook.
Describe that. How would that, if you're doing that when a fish takes, maybe describe how you get a good hook set.
Yeah, so it's interesting for all you trout guys. We're used to watching an indicator, and any little slightest movement, we're setting the hook. But when you start fishing for coastal steelhead, or where it's a really aggressive animal, again, we're talking 8 to 15 pound fish. We don't set the hooks on these little ticks and these little moves of the indicator. We want a full hard takedown. So let's say you get a really hard takedown, and then you want to set the hook as pretty much as hard as you can, as fast as you can. But the biggest thing is, get that hard hook set, and then those first 2 strips are extremely important. That's what's going to make sure that fish doesn't drop your fly. So a lot of coastal steelhead, they do 3 things when you first hook them. The first thing they do is a massive figure 8 under the water, and they'll do like 3 or 4 of these massive figure 8s, these big body rolls. So that's where your stripping comes in play. If you don't strip twice to prevent that fish from rolling its head over, it's going to drop your hook probably 50% of the time. I always tell people when you're coastal steelhead fishing, if you can keep that fish on for a minute, you probably have a 85 to 90% chance of landing it. But that first minute is the most important part of the whole fight. The first minute and last minute, landing them and then hooking them.
Yeah.
So the three things, they do the big barrel roll under the water. If you don't strip right away, they come off immediately. The second thing they do is you'll hook them and then they'll instantly fly out of the water, which steelhead are famous for, and the big coastal ones, they tend to jump further than the valley or mountain steelhead do. And so that's where you're bowing your rod, just like you bow to tarpon. You have to bow to, bowing to trout is actually a thing, but the trout are smaller, so they don't come off as often, so the larger the fish, the bigger the jump, so when you hook a 60-pound tarpon and that thing jumps 6 feet, you have to give, as much slack to that fish as possible for it not to throw the hook. Coastal steelhead fishing is sort of the same way. You hook a 12-pounder and it jumps 4 or 5 feet. You can't just hold your rod up because it's just going to shake its head left and right and dump your hook. So, that's the second move. And the third move is, you set the hook really hard and you get one strip in and all of a sudden they just take off to the races and not holding that line too tightly, right? And allowing that line to slip to your reel and engage your drag. So those three moves are deadly. The first one, the barrel roll, is the one that gets everybody.
Yeah. Because what are they doing when they do the barrel roll? They're just basically putting slack into your hook that's in the corner of their mouth.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So they are literally, it's like a figure eight. Sometimes they get tangled, right? By those fish doing that. But that barrel roll, if you don't strip twice, as soon as they get their head flipped completely over, that hook just slides right off their mouth. So, the learning how to bow is easy. It just takes time and practice. Learning to let them run is the easiest. That's the steelhead you want to hook because that one stays on. That one's creating tension for you, right? You don't really have to do a lot. You just don't have to be an idiot and make the mistake of, holding onto your line. So, we're fishing pretty heavy gear over there. We're not fishing, trout tippets. Generally, we're just fishing straight maxima. Anywhere from 12 to 8-pound maxima, so in tippet world, you're probably talking 15 to 20-pound tippet. So you don't really break fish off unless you're completely rookie mistake.
Gotcha. What does that leader setup look like if you're fishing typical, this kind of drifting?
Yeah.
You're doing, yeah.
So we would do, let's say we were running like 8.5 feet to our weight. So we'd run a big indicator. We'd probably run 12 or 10-pound maxima, and that the difference would be based on the water clarity. If we had steelhead green where it was only 3 or 4 feet, we're going to use as heavy a line as possible. If the water's getting really ultra clear, then we might drop down to 8-pound maxima. So we're going to base our pound of line, based on the water clarity. So let's say it's steelhead green, we have 3 or 4 feet of visibility. We're going to drop about 8.5 feet from our indicator of 12-pound maxima. And then we're going to tie a blood knot or a surge knot. Blood knots are stronger. And then we're just going to run 2 egg patterns. We're going to run 1 bead, and then we're going to run 1 yarn pattern off the bead. So those are going to be, the bead's going to probably be on 12-pound as well. So we'll just keep the same poundage running down. And then one little trick is putting the second egg on lighter. So if when you only have 3 or 4 feet of visibility, there's lots of trees and redwoods and snags in the river. So if you do snag up on your bottom egg, and let's say you put that one on 8-pound maxima, the odds are you're going to break off 1 egg versus the whole rig. So it saves you some time and some money as well. And then at that knot junction, we're going to use quite a bit of split shot, so a lot of the guides have gotten away from using lead, so a lot of guys are using that Dunsmuir 10 shot. So they have different sizes, but the biggest one they make is called SSG. It's 1.6 grams of weight. Most guys are going to be using an SSG plus a AAA. So a AAA is half of that. So that's 0.8, so most of us are going to be using about 2.4 grams of weight to keep that down in the zone for as long as possible. It's a really simple setup. The thing about coastal steelhead fishing, it's hunting and searching. A big trick to it is that you kind of fish quickly, and something looks really good. Maybe you give it 2 or 3 back rows, you give it 2 or 3 chances. But if you don't hook one in 2 or 3 chances, then you keep moving. You keep moving until you get your first hookup. And for any of the steelhead anglers out here, we know that steelhead travel together as they migrate from the ocean. So once you find one, that means there's others either in the run above you that you missed in that run or the next run coming up. So as soon as you hook that first fish, then all of a sudden you kind of put the brakes on, and then you start working the river a lot more thoroughly, at least for like the next mile. Let's say in the next mile you don't hook one, then you start speeding up again until you hook the second one. But as soon as you hook that fish, whether it's your second fish, your third fish, then all of a sudden you put the brakes on and you be a lot more methodical and you work the water a lot harder because you already know there's other fish. It might only be one other fish, but generally they swim in groups, right? So generally they're going to be in groups of 5 to 10. I've fished the coast a lot, and I've seen pods of 100. So it just depends on how big of a pod comes in with the rainstorm or the surf, the swell conditions. But yeah, so that's a big trick. So fish quick until you find one. And if you're walking and waiting, you can do the same thing, get to a spot, fish it 5, 6 times, you don't get bit. I would probably reel in and move to the next spot until you find that fish, and then all of a sudden start working the water more thoroughly.
There you go. That's a great tip. Yeah. So don't get stuck in one run thinking just because you caught fish there the day before. Although, yeah, you can get to a spot if it's a good run, fish can stack up. But if you're going through with multiple passes and nothing, just keep moving until you find the fish. So that's a good tip.
Yeah, steelhead are generally always on the move, and the only time they're not is when the water is like really low and clear. A lot of times really low and clear scares a lot of people off, but if you're nymphing, you can actually do fairly well. You just got to adjust your egg colors. Your egg colors have to get a lot more pale. They can't be bright. And then when it gets low and clear, those fish are sitting in those deep, slow tailouts, right? Those big tanks, they're not up in the riffles because they're scared. So a lot of times when the water gets really low and clear, you got to kind of adjust where you're fishing. You got to fish that deep, slow kind of pond speed water. And then you got to change your egg colors and make them pale, right? Really pale oranges, really pale peaches. Nothing can be bright because those fish are ultra spooky.
Right. What size is the fly? What would be if like a yarn fly, what would be a type name and maybe like a size?
There's a fly called a micro spawn. It's pretty famous across the country. So we just take the micro spawn and we just make it larger. So on normal conditions, let's say 3, 4, 5 feet of visibility, we'd be fishing shrimp pink is one of our favorite colors. We hand tie shrimp pink micro spawns, or steelhead orange is another popular color. And we tie them on size 4 egg hooks or size 2, so I think if you buy a store-bought microspawn, it's either a size 12 or a 10, one of those, just go big, make sure you have a hook that's going to work and it's going to hold on to a 15-pounder, right? Something that's going to really bury in there. And, legally on the coast, we have to fish barbless. Having a barb is a lot easier to land them. So that's where your stripping becomes really important when you first hook them. But the nice thing about the yarn is sometimes those little small teeth that steelhead and trout have will sometimes get stuck in that yarn and give you a little extra bonus in terms of holding on to them.
Oh, right. So that's the thing with this yarn. I'm not sure what kind of yarn it is, but yeah, I'm always think of like the glow bug, right? The old glow bug, which was just glow bug yarn. And there's, similar, but this has a little bit different design. Is there a specific thing about this pattern that's different than, say, a glow bug or any other like bug type yarn fly?
I don't know if it truly matters, to be honest. I have done thousands of days of steelhead fishing at this point in my life, and things I thought were true when I was younger, the more I fish, I think a lot of the stuff we believe are myths.
Yeah, right.
So I think a lot of times with steelhead fishing, I think the brightness of your egg really matters. I have seen that in person, that if you get clear water, like choosing the right egg color is ultra important. But, if there's only 3 or 4 feet of visibility, you just want a bright egg. I don't think it really matters. And I think it's more about getting it in front of them than it is per se if you're fishing a micro spawn or like a standard glow bug. I think it's more about the color of the egg, and it just really, when the water's clear, you want that egg to be pale. When the water's green, you want it to be bright. And some guys go out there with 1.5 feet of visibility. Those conditions are pretty rough to fish in. That is all about maximizing the size of the egg, making something as big and as bright as possible. 1.5 feet is hard for a fish to see. So some guys will even use chartreuse when it's that color, right? Just trying to get the fish's attention. And a lot of steelhead are not, when you're fishing and nymphing them, they're not moving to your fly. You have to take your to them, right? It's a whole different concept than swinging. You're not trying to fly and then chase, right? So yeah, so it's more about color and size of the egg than it is per se what pattern or type of flight.
Right. Cool. And so you did some fishing in Oregon as well. Were you doing similar things in Oregon? And the rivers, like the Eel versus, say, a Nestucca, how similar are those rivers?
Yeah, doing the exact same thing. I love the Nestucca. I have been many days there. Actually, my top full steelhead day ever of my life was on the Nestucca. We had been there. I had a good friend who lived in Seaside, and we had been there for a couple days already. There was no rain in Oregon for like 2 weeks, so everything was super low and clear. We'd fished the Nestucca for 2 days. We did well. We were hooking like 5 or 6 a day. The steelhead fishing in Oregon is significantly better than California.
Oh, it is. So it's quite a bit better than any of the rivers you talked about.
Yes, it's a whole nother level. If you're nymphing them, like I said, on the Eel, your average day for the boat, you're hooking 2 or 3. For most of my experience in Oregon, you're hooking 5 to 6 on average. So, I mean, it's pretty much double of California on a daily basis. So we had been on the Nestucca, fishing out of a raft and doing the side drifting thing. And, like I said, I think the 2 days before we took 5 or 6 each day. And then the end of the second day, it started, the first storm rolled in and it started sprinkling. Generally, rain and steelhead fishing, they kind of go hand in hand, but storms are not good, right? Because that's when rivers rise and rivers blow out. And as soon as the rivers blow out, the fish are moving. So not only can the fish not see your flies anymore, but now they're all wanting to go spawn and migrate. So the end of the second day, it started sprinkling, and that evening it turned into steady rain, and we woke up to a rising river, which is generally a bad thing when you're a steelhead fisherman. You don't want a rising river because that means those fish are about to go on the move. But it had been so low that the river had only jumped like 1.5 feet. And so we went out and fished the exact same section we had fished the day before. And we ended up hooking 26 coastal fish that day.
Oh, wow.
It was mind-blowing. I mean, the same water we'd fished the day before. Those fish weren't moving because it hadn't rained in 2 weeks, and so what had happened is those fish felt the river rising, and days before we were catching all these fish in these really slow, deep pond sections, and then those fish were getting excited, and they were all moved up into the fast buckets, into the the easy water to catch them in, and the river would end up blowing out that evening and was not fishable the next day. But it literally felt like every spot we went to, it was like first or second cast, and it was just one of those days you read about, one of those days you dream about. It probably will never happen again in the rest of my life.
Right.
I think my second best day besides that is probably 15. You know what I mean? So to catch 11 or hook 11 more on that, I mean, it was just one of those days that's written in storybooks. So you just have to spend a lot of time. You kind of have to get lucky, But steelhead fishing, coastal steelhead fishing, not the valleys or the mountains. The valleys and mountains, again, those are more like trout fishing.
Yeah, right. But the eel and the other,
Yep.
What are the other big names that people would know about on the coast down there?
Yeah, so the big names, the Van Duzen, the Mattole, the Van Duzen Mattole are smaller rivers. The Smith is a big one. The Smith is nice because it clears the fastest. So the Smith is pretty much fishable within 24 hours after a storm is done. So let's say you get an inch of rain, all the rivers in Northern California are blown out, 24 hours later, the Smith is coming into shape. The Smith is hard though, because it's a really big river that has tons of water. So it is hard to fish. You see a lot more gear fishermen on the Smith than you do fly fishermen. And then there's Redwood Creek. There's some smaller stuff, that like walk and wade guys do that, aren't necessarily boat rivers. There's a lot of options. There's more options in Oregon. Like you guys have way more coastal steelhead rivers than Northern California does. My experience up there where you live, it seems like every 30 miles you're driving across another steelhead river,
Yeah.
So they're pretty much endless up there. And you guys have less pressure and, your state manages the fisheries better. So, for those that are traveling to steelhead fish, don't come to California.
Oh, really? So that's not the place just because of the pressure and just not as many numbers?
Yeah, it's lots of people, and you guys are all competing for the same number of fish. In Oregon, you're going to find a lot more solitude and, in larger fish numbers. But, for the guys who live in, San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California, it's really nice to only have to drive 3 or 4 hours to get into, true coastal steelhead. The market for guiding in California tends to be your Bay Area, Sacramento.
Yeah, that's the hub. Yeah, that's definitely the hub. Nice. Well, before we get out of here in a bit, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. Maybe talk about your book. You have a book out there. I know you've got one in the past, one coming up. Give us a heads up there.
Yeah, I published a book in 2022. It's called A Real Job. You can find it on Amazon. It's a collection of short stories, just crazy people have done in the boats. Just kind of fun. I wrote it for myself. I didn't really have any desire to make any money off it, and I was going to publish it and say, hey, if I can sell 500 copies, I pay for the cost of the editor and the printing and all the process. And it was really humbling. After I published it, about a month later, I got a message on social media from some guy I don't even know, and he said, this is the best book I've read all year. I hope you write another one. And I was kind of taken back by that. I was like, oh, wait, really? Like someone's enjoying this? And then the following week, the same thing happened. And this just kind of keeps happening. Every week I get like 2 or 3 messages on social media,
Nice.
Some from other parts of the country, some from other countries across the world. And, it's to the point where it's not a bestseller, but I've sold like 2,000 copies. And there's been a lot of just positivity around it and just how many people have enjoyed it. And because of that, so many people asking for another one, I decided to start writing a second book, kind of a sequel that's going to be coming out probably in March. So I'm pretty pumped on that. Derek DeYoung did the cover for the second book.
Oh, yeah, Derek. Yep.
Yeah. So Derek and his wife did a great job in designing the second cover. The second book's going to be called, it's kind of a play off the same word. The first one is A Real Job, REEL. The second book is going to be called Really Unbelievable Fly Fishing Stories. And it's the same thing. It's a collection of short stories from the boat and just guide stories. After you've guided for 21 years, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't seen and stuff that people find unbelievable. And, it's just my way of sharing that with the world.
Perfect. Good. Awesome. Well, let's just do a quick little Fly Shop shout out here. Fly Shop Friday. So this one today is presented by Togens Fly Shop. They just moved out from actually Canada. They're in Colorado now. So just talked to Brad recently. So we're going to give Togens a big shout out. But maybe give a shout out to where you were when you're in California to a fly shop there, and then where you are now. I'm not sure. Do you have any shops around your area now?
Yeah. In California, I was an independent, so I didn't work for any shops. So I started with an outfitter that no longer exists, worked for them for 4 years. And then the last 16 years, I've done my own thing. Currently here in Flathead Valley, I am guiding for Big Fork anglers out of Big Fork, Montana. We specialize in fishing the Flathead River here in the valley, and then the Lower Clark's Fork and the Blackfoot. So those are our big 3. And if you guys like dry fly fishing for trout, it's not coastal steelhead fishing, but all of us like to see a fish rise to a fly. There's plenty of that here in Montana. Perfect.
Good deal. All right. Awesome. And just a couple random ones as we get out of here. First, we're going back on this, the boat. I'm interested in what boat, what's your, I guess, for steelhead, let's take it to California. What were you, it sounds like you're using a raft more than, say, a drift boat or something like that.
No, I was actually using a drift boat in California. A lot of the rivers we fish in California are big enough. You don't need necessarily a raft.
Oh, gotcha. What was your boat you were using back then?
Yeah, so I'm a hide guy. I've been a hide guy my whole life. So I think I'm on my 4th hide. I switched to a skiff, which is a lower profile, lighter boat. I switched to that about 6 years ago, and we'll never go back to a full size boat.
I hear you. I rode my first hide and my first skiff. It was a hide skiff this last year in Idaho, and it's unbelievable. I mean, as long as you're not going through big whitewater, right? These things are amazing.
Yeah. If you need to go through big water, then it's not the boat for you. But to be honest, most of your boat rivers, you can either skirt a wave or dodge a rock. If you know how to row well. So even all the coastal steelhead fishing I would do in California, I was running my skiff. I didn't need a full size boat. But that skiff is about 180 pounds lighter than their full size. And when you think about that, it's like, well, that's technically having like one less person in the boat every day, Yeah. So it feels so much different on your body. It's like a little hot rod on the river. So now that I've rode a drift boat for 21 years and I'm 41 now, my body could use a little less weight.
That's right. Nice. Good. And You mentioned, I'm curious on the property. It sounds like you moved to Montana. Do you have like a little chunk of property now out there? What's that look like versus what you were at before?
Yeah, we in Chico, we lived in kind of suburbia. We had a standard 4-bedroom house on like a 1/4 acre lot, with lots of neighbors. And we now live in our specific town is Summers, Montana. We're about a mile from Flathead Lake, and we were able to buy a nice home on 9 acres.
Oh, wow. What's that like for you, Ryan? Like, you go from, kind of in suburbia and now with 9 acres. Like, describe that. Is that a pretty cool deal to have that?
It is. I still look out my back window and can't believe I live here every day, to have space. And we have neighbors, just everyone's on these 8 to 20 acre parcels, and yeah, it's so cool to have space for kids. It's a lot safer here in Montana than California to let my kids go outside and roam and do whatever they want. We give them a walkie-talkie, and so
right.
They call in with the walkie-talkie if they need anything. And one of the big adjustments is mowing the lawn.
Oh, right.
So you mowing the lawn on suburbia takes you about 45 minutes. Here we have a riding lawnmower and we have about 5 acres of grass.
Oh, wow. What's that take you?
Well, so, I have 2 girls, so 12 and 9. So what I do is we taught my 9-year-old how to ride the riding lawnmower, and then my 12-year-old's on a push mower, and then I'm on the weed whacker. So if all 3 of us are going, we can do the 5 acres in about 5 hours.
There you go. 5 hours. That's not bad.
Yeah, but that's a team event. If it's just me, it's every bit of all day, But heck, I'll give you 5 hours of my life every couple of weeks to have just space and the ability to just absorb God's beauty,
Exactly. Nice. Well, this is perfect. I think we'll leave it there, and we'll send everybody out to casthope.org if they have questions. And yeah, this has been a great conversation, Ryan. I appreciate, everything you're doing, definitely for the kids, going back to that and giving us some tips on steelhead fishing. So yeah, excited to keep in touch with you. And I think we've got probably some events. I know we're working on one, so we'll be in touch definitely with you and Hogan, and excited to keep in touch here.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Dave. I appreciate being on the show.
That is a wrap. You can grab all of the show notes at wetflyswing.com. And please follow us on Instagram and share this episode out with someone you love. Please send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you have any feedback or want us to put together an episode on this podcast for you. Check in anytime. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and would love to meet up with you on the water. We have new fly fishing schools going all year long and all around the country, so if you want to connect, let's do it right now. All right, time to get out of here. I hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon wherever in the world you are, and I appreciate you for stopping by and checking out the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.